We are back. Firstly, apologies to everyone. I have been insanely busy over the last couple of weeks and haven't had a chance to put some content out. So I promise now to be a lot more consistent now that most of that's behind me. So we do have a lot to catch up on to jump right in. First, we have just seen the BRICS countries, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, meeting to strategize on how they can best distance themselves from the global reserve currency, which is, of course, right now the US dollar. Fresh on the heels of that meeting, we have now the powerhouse that is China and Russia, at least between themselves, agreeing to trade in the Chinese yuan, which will be a big blow to the US dollar, of course, because that's a lot of economic energy taken off the US dollar. And in my opinion, it's probably going to be the start of what will maybe be a domino effect to more and more countries and situations kind of looking to distance themselves from the global reserve currency. Now, this has been a conversation in the macro environment for quite some time. How quickly that progresses, I don't know. But what I do know is it's a pretty hefty step in the direction of perhaps changing the global reserve currency in the not too distant future. Now, this coupled with the fact that we are amidst what has been labeled the bank contagion, and there are a lot of videos out there that are going into detail as to what that is, how it potentially started. But for this video's purposes, essentially, in a nutshell, it is a lot of key banks within the US in particular, either having to close doors or be bailed out by the government. Now, what comes with that bailout, of course, is the Treasury printing a lot of dollars to help accomplish that, which, of course, adds to the whole devaluation of the dollar, brings a bit of a steroid injection into this whole inflationary environment. And it's hot on the heels of the Treasury having already printed out trillions of dollars during COVID. It's not an ideal situation for the US dollar. And as such, when we approach situations like this, where we see a particular currency, certainly one as big as the US, that is the global reserve currency, starting to see some significant devaluation, folks start to look for other stores of value. Traditionally, these stores of value have, of course, been in things like commodities. Gold and silver have always performed well during times like this, as well as real estate in certain situations, businesses. So we start to see a bit of a change in dynamic within the ecosystem as to where those dollars are put and how people foresee getting the best use out of that storage, the most value they can bring to themselves. What does this mean for crypto? Well, in my opinion, and it is just my opinion, but I believe that all of these macro events are helping play very heavily into a very positive crypto future. Now, most of us who have been in crypto for quite some time, of course, see an inevitable future where crypto is a much more prevalent part of finance in general. But I do think situations like this, where it's almost a mix of so many different facilitators, help really drive a lot of rapidity into this. And I think that that future is faster approaching than ever before. So right now, anyone looking at crypto as an investment avenue, which I hope if you're looking at this video right now, you certainly fit that mold if you're not already heavily invested in crypto. We are still very, very early. And I keep saying this. You've only got to look at some of the marquee blue chip cryptos of the world, like Bitcoin, like Ethereum, and look at their price performance and see how far away from their previous all-time highs they are, even to understand just how early we are. Now, right now, and I've said this before also, right now, to invest in some of the projects within the crypto world that you have assessed the fundamentals, you see it being a good choice of investment. To invest right now is significantly less risky than investing down the road where prices have already experienced some of this movement. Anyone right now who is already interested in things like the Richard Heart ecosystem, that is Hex, PulseChain, PulseHex, now is still a perfect time to start setting your position. Not only are we kind of coming in ahead from the bull market in proper, where we start seeing some of that really great price action and those big green candles where everyone tends to jump on board that bandwagon as it's already rolling off. Not only getting out in front of that, but we're setting ourselves up to capitalize on what may be one of the most successful and impactful launches of all time when it comes to crypto. And that's a pretty strong sentiment to make. But I've been in crypto for a while, and I've spoken to a lot of my network who have also been in crypto for a while. And the viewpoint really is in this ecosystem making such a huge impact within the crypto space and providing anyone with enough foresight and enough confidence to get involved into this ecosystem, at least, very early on, then, it's providing a very good opportunity to make some life-changing wealth without having to wait for confirmation from, the naive kind of noobs that are coming in further down the line, where you're not necessarily going to make such a huge difference in your life just because, a lot of that price performance and economic energy has already made its moves. So that to say that I think that right now we are in a prime situation, both from a macro and micro level, to really help set a sound financial future for ourselves, regardless of if you've already gotten involved in this ecosystem or if you're thinking about getting involved now. If you're thinking about getting involved now, remember that you're in the majority. Most people are not yet into this ecosystem because they're waiting for that confirmation. It's up to you whether you want to take that leap of faith, so to speak, in something that a lot of us are very confident will grow and grow and grow, or you want to sit back and wait. And that's totally fine too. If you want to sit back and wait for that confirmation and at least accept internally that you don't necessarily need to see some of those huge gains initially, you'd much rather make a qualified investment, so to speak, a little bit further down the road, once some of that price movement has shown to come to fruition. That's totally fine too. But what I will say is, though, PulseChain only launches once. We have the SEC breathing down everyone's necks. We have huge kind of factors within the greater world system that is shining a light on crypto, which, along with all the pros and the economic energy that it will bring to the system, it's also going to bring limitations and sanctions, and it's going to cut away some of the freedom inevitably that we're enjoying right now. We've already seen that start to happen. So what I would say is you've got to ask yourself, are we necessarily going to see such a huge opportunity as this new ecosystem coming to fruition? Again, are we going to be able to capitalize in the right way? I don't think so. And I'd love to be wrong, because it means that, it's if we do have some real big opportunities ahead of us as well, it's going to mean that we're able to diversify into some of these exciting opportunities too. But I'm also not naive enough to think that I shouldn't be leveraging and capitalizing fully right now, purely because I see a lot of potential personally with this ecosystem, with PulseChain, PulseX, and both hexes. I see a lot of opportunity ahead to make some life-changing wealth. And I'm not brave enough to put my stock in that environment being around after this bull cycle and the cycle after. I much prefer to set my positions now to cut down the time frame in which I'm looking to capitalize and take out some hopefully life-changing wealth as well. So that leads me to strategies on how best to capitalize on the launch of PulseChain. I've had a lot of questions in my comments, and apologies, I haven't really been able to get back to most folks just because I've been so busy recently with other ventures that I'm in. All good stuff, but it has also meant that I've not been able to be as hands-on with my channel here. But a lot of questions pertaining around what I would advise, or as I'm not a financial advisor, what my own advice to myself would be, when it comes to really capitalizing on this probably once in a lifetime launch. I mean, I know that's a strong thing to say, but I really truly believe that. I mean, hopefully we get some more positive launches in the future, but I do think that this one in particular is so strong that playing it right, playing it safe, looking to capitalize is going to be key to anyone's crypto future who is interested in this ecosystem. So to get into it, now, you have to be cognizant of the fact that there are a lot of enthusiasts in this community. A lot of people will prioritize one token over another. And every couple of weeks, every couple of months, we do see new unique selling points, new value propositions brought to the table, all very interesting stuff for particular tokens, like a PulseX, for PulseChain, for Hex, for PHEX. And often that narrative could sway some of the fickle-minded, or not necessarily fickle-minded, just people open for more information, and has that open mindset to learn as we go forward. But what comes with that is a jumping between, each of these tokens and valuing one perhaps over the other, and in that short moment, and then another value proposition will come and someone will jump on that bandwagon. And let me tell you, it is my opinion that all of this ecosystem is superb. They are all different in key ways, and they all should see some really great price performance. As long as you have some conviction, as we've talked about, some patience, you can't really go wrong. Where I think you run the risk of going wrong is adopting that kind of ultra trading mentality where you want to kind of dance between Pulse Chain, PulseX, Hex, and try to time the market efficiently. The best traders in the world fall into these pitfalls all the time. And you have a real risk if you play that wrongly of devaluing your own position as time goes on just by exiting certain positions at the wrong time. The best strategy, in my experience, is to simplify things, gain a wider exposure to everything. So if you have a PulseX position right now, but you don't currently have a Hex or a Pulse Chain position, focus your attention on inflecting some new value into Hex or into PulseX or Pulse Chain when it launches, rather than necessarily having to exit out of your existing position. Now, I understand that not everyone is going to have extra dry powder hanging around, hopefully over this period of time. You've listened to my previous videos and many others out there who have told you to take a part-time job, stop putting aside dry powder, start buying Hex because it's still early for Hex. All of these stuff is said for a reason. But if you haven't done that, or you're brand new to the channel, the best thing I can say right now is if you already have a position in, let's just say, one of the sacrifices, maybe you take a very small percentage of that and then look to gain a position in one of the other tokens within this ecosystem. Because timing the market is the downfall of many a trader. We'd all love to be able to time the market perfectly. And of course, in a couple months, in a couple years, in hindsight, you look back at the charts, it's like, oh, wow, if I'd only sold there and got it there, and I should have done that. Of course, every man and his dog has that thought when you look back in hindsight. But there is no real way of predicting this with any certainty as to which token is going to perform better. A lot of common sense for some people leads them to believe that Pulse Chain is going to come out of the gates extremely strong and PulseX is going to trail behind. Others believe that that buy and burn is going to kick in on PulseX right away, and people are actually going to have the adverse effect when they think that PulseX is undervalued. They're going to sell back in. Hex and PulseX, PulseX could be the dark horse here, and who knows? We don't know how things are going to play out. And let me tell you, nobody knows. This is something that hasn't really been done before. The beauty of it is, and I'm a big believer in this vertically integrated ecosystem, that price performance is bonded. I think that a lot of this price performance of the ecosystem in general should be pulling each other up. So if you lengthen your time horizon, I will say that you can't really go wrong if you were to just go by historic events and just the selling points and the value propositions that this whole ecosystem has in general. I will also say this, and now this is a harsh reality and a harsh truth for many of us to swallow. We are all poor. The majority of people watching this video, the majority of people who sacrifice for any of these tokens put in a relatively small amount of money. I'm talking under $1,000, under 5,000, under 10,000. A 10x, a 20x, a 30x is not going to cut it. I'm telling you this. We have seen some of the real true crypto players in the world. Now I'm talking some of the marquee, the blue chips, even some of the DEXs, the real well-known DEXs like the Uniswap. People who sold out at a 10x did not change their world. Now, in my opinion, this launch already has a massive community, and it's only going to grow as we start kind of unleashing this ecosystem on the world and seeing all these different use cases. We only get one shot at this. Selling yourself short. Sorry, I had a message there. Selling yourself short and selling out at a 5x, at a 10x, even at a 20x is probably something that isn't really going to affect your life too much if you're one of those smaller players. Now, the catch-22 of this is a lot of the people who put in money to the larger amounts, a lot of the folks who would put in, hundreds of thousands, millions, for instance, always have a longer mindset anyway. For starters, they put in enough money that they're not necessarily going to miss that money to live on. They know the potential of projects like this, and maybe they'll pull out their initial investment, but they're going to let that thing ride as much as possible because they understand that, it takes money to make money. Now, for anyone who put in a relatively conservative amount of money, And to be honest with you, that's the majority of people. In order to really see that huge change in wealth, you're going to need to be patient. You're going to need to keep it rolling for enough time that you can truly capitalize on this. And what comes with that, it's a lot of volatility. Now, it's going to go up, it's going to come down. If you're going to trade at all, maybe you can time the initial kind of 95% drop that these tokens seem to have. But who knows if we're going to have that with this token? It's a different ball game. The crypto cycles have always differed slightly, albeit following the same theme. Right now, we don't really know if that's going to play out the same way, especially as we've got a PulseX that has this buy and burn function that could offset some of those initial dips, or at least curtail them quite a lot. So we start kind of regaining that price movement yet again. It's anyone's guess as to how this plays out. But what I will say is this: if you're going to take two things away from this video, it is, firstly, you need to have patience. You need to make sure that any money you're putting in, if your true goal is not just to make a decent return on your investment, but to make some life-changing wealth. We've seen folks experience life-changing wealth. I'm talking 100,000, 2,000, 3,000, 10,000x on tokens from just having confidence and patience. Now, I think that this is going to be the hardest thing that any of us have ever done, staying vigilant when we're seeing price volatility as it's expected. But if it was easy, anyone would do it. When you're looking back at a price performance chart and you're wondering how many people held from this point to this point, typically speaking, it's not that many people. I mean, you're going to have a very small percentage of folks who have actually held, unless it's a token like Hex that had somewhat of a way of ensuring people weren't selling out early by staking and enforcing that stake over a period of time. But when it comes to something that's a little bit more freewheeling, and really the longevity of anyone's investment is really subjective to their own kind of thoughts, it's going to take some real diamond hands to make sure that you're not selling out prematurely. And I'm telling you, again, I'm not a financial advisor, but many will sell out prematurely in the hope of getting back in at a cheaper price, and the majority of folks will price themselves out. The majority of folks will lose motivation because they're already down from the position they sold out from. All of this stuff plays into every single crypto investment, especially the successful ones with a long track record. And often the best case scenario is to simply set it and forget it until you have a time frame in mind. Maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's a year, maybe it's 2 years. Hell, maybe like it was for Hex for many people, it was 10 years. But that is probably the key takeaway to have when planning how you're going to react to this. And the second thing is diversify within the ecosystem. Now, I'm a big believer this ecosystem, as I've mentioned, is going to be successful all around. But in order to really look to hedge your bets within this, allocate whatever you're allocating to this ecosystem and spread them out evenly. Hex right now, in my opinion, is a perfect way of doing this because you're going to get that copy. Even if we do experience a sell after kind of PulseChain launches, you still get the copy. And ultimately, again, if you just lengthen your time horizon, even to 6 months, a year down the road, you're going to see prices come back up and you're going to be doing a heck of a lot better than when you first invested. Plus, if you have some of your percentage then also in PulseChain and PulseX, you're really not dependent on one horse kind of reaching the finish line, in your opinion, in a timely manner. You're watching the whole race. And that's going to be key as well. We're still early, folks. And I don't want to ramble on in this video too much. I like to put these videos out kind of in a one and done. So apologies if a little bit of my messaging here is redundant. But I just want to make sure that everyone has the right mind frame. We're seeing a lot of macroeconomic events right now that are taking form that play very strongly into the whole crypto narrative. And we're seeing an ecosystem launching that what could be a pinnacle moment for crypto in general. And so I would advise anyone to make sure that you're thinking of this not in terms of making some of those short trade window wins. Victory is not the launch. Victory is 6, 12, 24, 36 months down the line where we've seen some of the real price movement. Getting in and out is for the pump and dumps. This isn't a pump and dump, in my opinion. This is something that we should be vesting energy, mental energy into, and looking to plot potentially the rest of our investment portfolio around. We're looking to build around a strong core. And in my opinion, core investments fall under the Richard Heart ecosystem. Look at Hex right now. We've seen some real stable price action in a time where a lot of cryptos have been either non-performative or they've been up and down like crazy. Hex has not. Hex has performed really, really well. And it's because of the fundamentals in place. It's because of the community. It's because of the founder. And it's because of a lot of the catalysts we have coming up. Bearing all of this in mind, I'm telling the community right now, just to be patient. Don't live day to day on some of this news. Don't live week to week, month to month. This is a bit more of a longer play. It's going to take time in hands. And I promise at the end of whatever, at the end of the year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, let alone the next cycle, you are going to be reaping the rewards of staying vigilant and not being tempted by some of the early tiny victories that could take place when ultimately, if you don't look to time the market and you're looking to have quote unquote time in the market, this is a scenario where that pays off a great amount. So I hope this helped. I'll be back later on this week with some more videos too, but I just wanted to start this one off by kind of reaffirming my position within this ecosystem, what I'm seeing in the world as well, let alone some of the other stuff we've talked about in regard to the banks and them looking for other forms of value and creatively looking to strategize around crypto and all the investment opportunities we have coming up. That's other videos. That's another thing we can touch on, but also bring in a lot of potential economic energy to the space. Thank you again for everyone who has emailed in with portfolio in the description, because I've seen a lot of interest in a potential Patreon. So thank you again for that. I'm still going to be kind of rounding up everyone who is interested. If you are interested in a Patreon, please do message me at bencage@yahoo.com. In the subject line, put portfolio, and I will then add you to kind of the Patreon list that is kind of being built out right now. A lot of exciting things to come ahead. And obviously, even though we talk about a core of the Richard Heart ecosystem, there are many other areas in order to make sure that we're capitalizing on. And so I'm going to be bringing that specifically into the Patreon group. But this is being built out right now. I'm just taking a temperature read and making sure that I have the folks who are initially interested sending their emails in and making sure that I know about it. So again, bencage@yahoo.com with portfolio in the subject line. I will add you to that if you are interested in a potential Patreon subscription. Thanks a lot, guys, and I will catch you on the next one.